I arrived home at 11 o'clock in the morning. The air conditioning in my office building had gone out, but that didn't change my routine. I usually rode my bike to work, a 4-mile trip each way, and today was no different. The ride back home was uneventful, the kind of quiet that wasn't intentional but simply happened. As I pulled into the backyard a little earlier than usual, I immediately noticed something odd. My wife, Nell, was sitting on the patio in a light shift dress, her bare feet resting on the ground. There was nothing unusual about that. What was unusual was the man sitting next to her, our neighbor Blake Downing. He was dressed in gym shorts and a snug-fitting t-shirt, a cold beer sitting on the table in front of him. They were sharing the double swing, sitting close, too close. When I first saw them, they were facing each other, and Blake's hand was resting on Nell's shoulder. They hadn't noticed me at first. For about 3 long seconds, I observed them unseen. Then, instead of stopping where I usually park my bike, I rolled it right onto the terrace, making my presence known. That was when they finally looked up. Nell's expression was one of surprise, confusion even, as she turned toward me. "Bobby," she asked hesitantly. Blake, on the other hand, reacted differently. He sprang up from the swing as if stung, his face a mix of unease and concern. He was an imposing man, 5'10", lean but strong, with sharp features. His once red hair was long gone. He had started shaving his head after losing most of it by 42. His left leg bore the scars of an old soccer injury, a shattered knee that had ended his playing days. He had moved into our neighborhood about a year ago and quickly made a name for himself as a self-defense instructor at the local YMCA. I had watched some of his classes but never participated. Years ago, I had trained in hand-to-hand combat myself. Even now, in my 40s, I still practiced. I never much cared for Blake's teaching style. He had a tendency to be self-aggrandizing, always making sure people knew how skilled he was. He ran 1 class for men, 2 for women, and a mixed class. Nell taught the women's class and had once asked if I wanted to join her in the mixed session. I had declined, knowing exactly how it would go. I was smaller than Blake, 4 inches shorter and 35 pounds lighter, but I had no doubt I could take him down. The problem was that Blake would feel the need to prove himself, especially in front of an audience. That could have easily led to a real fight, and the outcome wouldn't have been certain. Now, standing there, I could feel the tension thick in the air. I didn't hesitate. "Why don't you get me a beer?" I said casually. "I'll be right down." I leaned my bike against a tree and jogged inside, passing by both of them without another word. Upstairs, I walked straight to my small gun safe, unlocked it, and pulled out a baby Browning .25 caliber semi-automatic pistol. I loaded a single round into the chamber, then changed into a fresh pair of shorts and a loose t-shirt. Slipping the small gun into my side pocket, I took a deep breath before heading back downstairs. When I returned, they were still there, still uneasy. Nell remained in the double swing, and a 3rd beer had appeared on the table, unopened. I didn't sit. Instead, I stood there, taking in the scene, my expression unreadable. "The air conditioning went out at the office," I said, my voice measured. That was all. Over the years, I had learned that sometimes the best way to handle an uncomfortable situation was to let the other person speak first. I made a point of looking at each of them in turn, waiting. The silence stretched between us. They were at a crossroads. They could either acknowledge the tension, the undeniable intimacy I had walked in on, or they could pretend nothing had happened. The choice was theirs. Finally, Nell broke the silence. "We were just talking about self-defense classes, Bobby." I let the words hang in the air before responding. "Oh," I said slowly, because it seemed to me like there was a lot more going on, or about to happen. My gaze flicked to Blake. "What do you think?" Blake hesitated, shifting on his feet. "I think I should leave," he muttered. I nodded, then asked the question that had been burning in my mind. "Why were you even here, Blake?" He exhaled sharply. "I don't want to get involved, Bob." I held his gaze for a moment, my fingers brushing against the weight in my pocket. His answer wasn't good enough. Not nearly. I let the silence stretch between us, watching them both closely. Finally, I exhaled and spoke, my voice calm but firm. "I think that says it all, don't you?" I asked, my eyes never leaving Blake. "Your boyfriend doesn't seem to want to discuss what was happening when I got home." Nell lowered her gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's not my boyfriend, Bobby." I let out a humorless chuckle. "No, you were just about to kiss him when I arrived. I saw what I saw. Denying it won't change that. So maybe, just maybe, I need some kind of explanation." Blake's face twisted in anger, his composure cracking. His voice was sharp, dripping with arrogance. So what if we were going to kiss? She wanted it, and so did I. I turned to Nell, searching her face. She looked stricken. Really? I asked. She shook her head quickly. I'm sorry, she said. You know his class, Bobby. He's so much stronger and bigger than the ones I'm used to. Her voice wavered. There's nothing you could have done about it. Blake scoffed, rolling his eyes. Bobby isn't doing a damn thing here. None of the husbands do a damn thing. They're all wimps. For a brief moment, I wondered how Blake had survived this long with that kind of attitude. But I didn't care about that now. I was done. You need to leave, I said evenly. Blake hesitated, glancing at Nell, searching for support. I'm invited, right? Nell didn't look at him. Her voice was firm. No, you're not. I motioned toward the gate. Then go. Don't come back. He hesitated again. He lived just down the street, but he had to pass me to get there. I saw the indecision flicker across his face. He was thinking, calculating. I reached into my pocket. I didn't pull out the gun. I just let my hand rest there. I stepped back slightly, just enough to give him space. His eyes flicked to my pocket, and for the first time, I saw hesitation in him. Blake sneered. Coward. Nell shouted. Just walk away, Blake. He'll shoot you. Blake let out a harsh laugh. He's not going to shoot anyone. But he moved toward the gate anyway, slow and cautious, throwing glances over his shoulder. I was tired of this, tired of him, tired of the whole damn situation. It was time to end it. I pulled the magazine from my gun, racked the slide to eject the chambered round, and let both drop onto the ground behind me. Then I stepped forward, not quickly, not aggressively, just moving toward him. Blake's lips curled into a grin. He squared up, ready, eager. Nell was shouting something, but neither of us cared. When I got within range, Blake threw a quick, hard punch aimed for my head. It was fast, but not fast enough. I wasn't there when it should have landed. Instead, I struck first, hitting the side of his neck, targeting his carotid artery. His movements slowed for just a moment, long enough for me to drive my left fist into his ribs. Then a sharp right to his kidney as he twisted away. He went down, wheezing, struggling for breath. He tried to roll away, but I didn't let him. The moment he scrambled to his feet, I kicked him square in the ass. It felt appropriate. He hit the ground again but got back up fast, face red with anger and humiliation. This time, he didn't look back as he jogged toward the street. I followed at a distance, just to make sure he was really leaving. I watched him disappear around the corner of the house, then turned back. By the time I reached the patio, Nell was still there, frozen in some strange stance, one hand gripping her own neck. She was shaken. I walked past her without a word, picking up my gun. I reloaded it, retrieved the spent casing, and then grabbed my beer from the table. I didn't look at her as I headed inside. If she wanted to go after Blake, to comfort him, to be with him, that was her choice. I took my time in the shower, letting the hot water wash everything away. When I stepped out, towel drying my hair, I found Nell sitting on our bed. I stared at her for a long moment. I was about to push her off the bed, hard, let her feel even a fraction of what I felt, when I heard it. A noise. Someone was coming up the stairs. I reached for my other gun, a .32 caliber pistol, just as the bedroom door swung open. Blake stood there. A black pistol was clutched in his hand, held sideways like some wannabe gangster from a bad movie. His face was twisted with rage, with desperation. I didn't hesitate. I pulled the trigger. The shot cracked through the air. Blake staggered, his grip loosening. A small hole had appeared in his forehead, but the damage was done. His body crumpled, the gun slipping from his fingers. A single, muffled thump against the floor. He was dead. Nell screamed, the sound ripping through the room. I ignored her. Calmly, I picked up the landline, my fingers steady as I dialed. 911, I said when the operator answered. I need to report a shooting.